Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage, and we're back for another edition of Thyroid Answers podcast. Dr. Erica Riggleman is my partner in crime, is joining me again from Winchester, Virginia. How are you, Dr. Erica?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
I am doing great. So we have a fantastic guest today, and she's coming kind of right after our last podcast where we had one of my patients who was a medical doctor who we started working with, and what we needed to do for him was make kind of this radical shift in dietary habit, which almost had him like looking at me like I'm some crazy man. And we wound up putting him on a carnivore diet, made a dramatic change in his health and his life. He's off all his meds. He's reached his high school body weight and having just a dramatic change in his health and well-being. And so you said, hey, you know what, because of that topic, there is somebody that we both followed that we should probably get on to talk about that a little bit further. And that is our guest today, functional medicine practitioner, Holly Warner. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. So hey, we want to thank you for coming on the Thyroid Answers podcast. And I think you have a little bit of experience with thyroid physiology challenges. So can you give us a little bit about your health history, your background, and how you became this carnivore goddess?
I like that. Can that be my new hashtag?
Absolutely.
It's way nicer than the Sassy Carnivore.
Yeah. The goddess of Carnivorius or something like that, right?
Right? So I come from allopathic medicine, very heavily entrenched in that whole, here's what ails you, take a pill, all things fixed, bye-bye, have a good day, see your doctor when needed, listen, do what you're told, all of that good stuff. And kind of woke up one day and went, this doesn't make any sense. Women's hormones are out of whack, and what's going on with that? And then, oh, hang on, hormones are attached to thyroid because thyroid's a hormone. Whoa, wow. So my world kind of blew up, and then I thought, oh God, I hate everything to do with the thyroid. I don't want to do that in my own clinical practice. Like, no. And then I got asked to speak at this massive women's conference in front of like hundreds upon hundreds of women. And the topic was thyroid. And I went, that's not what I'm here to speak on. I'm here to speak on like estrogen and progesterone and thyroid. So I ended up doing a 45-minute talk on thyroid and having a lineup 2 hours long to answer questions of women who were crying and like, oh my God, thank you for the aha moment. And, I want to follow you. And I went, I don't do thyroid. Oh, wait, I think I do thyroid. I think I just stepped into the thyroid world. All right, here it is. And then it became fun and I enjoyed it because I was seeing the results with patients and giving them answers because they weren't getting answers from their own physicians. They were getting the typical, you see the TSH test. Oh, your hormone's fine and dandy, all in your head. Bye-bye, have a good day. Here's an antidepressant. Well, I don't have that kind of a deficiency. I have something else going on and you're testing, this isn't my thyroid. This is my thyroid. Why aren't we testing markers to do with this? Let's look at my antibodies. Let's look at, my reverse T3. Maybe, T4, T3 is not enough. What about, what I'm converting to? Why are we looking at my bile flow? Why are we not looking at all of the picture? So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to bring on medical doctors in the States, nurse practitioners within Canada, people that have prescribing capabilities, but also do the functional medicine, more of that holistic, allopathic, integrative approach, and continue doing my work with hormones. And in my journey, I got slammed with Hashimoto's. So I think it's kind of, I guess, funny that I got hit with the very thing that I was helping treat patients for. And I followed all of the literature and all of the experts and was told there is no cure and there's nothing you can do, and avoid gluten and avoid dairy and avoid this. And there was a lot of avoiding, manage stress and take this and do that. And so I refused to do any of the Synthroid or the Cytomel or any of that stuff. So I went to natural desiccated thyroid. I went to custom compounded thyroid. I went on it. No, I was at 30 milligrams and I was at 60 milligrams. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And then, other autoimmune conditions. I had a cold urticaria, which, there's no cause. So it just kind of was, getting worse and worse. And then started, I'm going to do whole food, plant-based. Because this cures everything, right? Veggies are good for us. The more greens, eat the rainbow. We're over-proteined as a society. Well, I eat those words every day now with my steak. Like, nothing that I was taught, nothing I learned in my master's for, nutrition, nothing I learned prepared me for where I am today, where I sit defying all logic, as do many of my patients with autoimmune conditions. So I did the whole food plant-based, and I got sicker, and I got bloated, and I was irritable, and I started to get bummed out. I thought there was a little bits of improvements with the thyroid when I went off of the gluten and I, removed the dairy, but it just wasn't getting me there. And then about 2.5 years ago, a friend of mine on Instagram, I watched her get very sick and swap over to carnivore. And I went, what are you doing? Are you nuts? You're crazy. You're going to die. You can't not eat vegetables. You need fruit. What are you going to do without fiber? And so I watched for a year, and I looked at her labs, and I saw the improvement, and I thought, maybe I'll try it for myself. Because, 30 days, 60 days, even 90 days, it's not going to kill me. I monitor my labs. Like, I'm constantly testing my levels. I know what I'm going to be at. So I did my labs, ready to go, out the gate. 2 weeks into carnivore, I went outside. I live in Canada, and it's very cold. It was -30, and I get cold urticaria. So I am covered, toque, the hands, the mitts, everything. I went outside, started my car, cleaned off my car. I wasn't bundled up. Came back inside, and my partner looked at me and went, your face. Well, what do you mean? Oh, yeah. Oh, do I have the hives? And then I went, well, hang on a second. I'm not itchy. And I ran to the bathroom mirror, and I turned on the light, and I looked, and I didn't have any hives. I had no cold urticaria. The first time in 10 years. And I thought, well, what's different? I didn't change my supplements. This doesn't make any sense. And then this big light bulb went off that I'd been on carnivore at that point for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And I thought, this is crazy. So I pushed through, and I continued, and 4 months into it, I did some more testing, and I thought, okay, my cholesterol looks great. My hormones look fantastic. My thyroid looks better. My antibodies are dropping. What's going on? 6 months, dropped right down. I was in the 50s for some, 90s for some. I had been in the hundreds for a bit. I was down to under 10 for both my TPO and my TG antibodies, both under 10. I no longer had any markers for Hashimoto's. My vitamin D, fantastic. Magnesium, fantastic. My Bs, fantastic. My iron levels, fantastic. Everything was fantastic at 6 months. So at a year, I decided to talk to patients within my clinical practice, and I said, hey, listen, here's what I'm seeing with my own autoimmune condition, with my Hashimoto's, which I'm asymptomatic, cold urticaria, non-existent. Here's how I feel. Here's what my hormones are doing. This is an option. Would you be interested? So slowly, through following my social media and seeing my own journey, many of my own patients had said, can I try this? So now I kind of dabble between low oxalate diet and carnivore diet. And I'm still happy to say that 2 and a bit years into it, I'm not symptomatic at all. My doctor looked at me and was like, you don't have Hashimoto's. Either we misdiagnosed, or I don't know what to tell you, because there's nothing there. You're fine. You are a healthy woman. So my next step is to test my telomeres, because I'm like, am I aging in reverse? So a steak a day keeps everything away. This is great. And that's my journey to where I am now. I was sick, and now I'm not.
So let's kind of unpack some of that if we can. First of all, maybe one of the best things to do is just, if you can give the listeners kind of the definition of what the carnivore diet is.
You know what? Simple. If it had a mom, you can eat it. That's it. Now there's phases to carnivore, and everybody's got their own theory of how they think carnivore should be done. Some think it's, you've got steak, you got salt, you got water, done. Other people are like, no, you got to do nose to tail. You can have fish, you can have duck, you can have chicken, you can use whatever it is that you want it to be, as long as it is an animal. If it had a mom, if it was alive and breathing at one point in time, whether it's a fish or a chicken or a cow or a bison or whatever the case may be, then it's carnivore. And depending on what you're using it for is to how strict you need to be. I mean, some people don't tolerate dairy. I do a lot of genetic testing within my clinical practice. So I'm able to kind of suss out people that you've got methylation issues, we want to watch out for this, or you've got this, you want to watch out for dairy. So maybe dairy isn't for everyone. It came from a cow, or it came from a sheep or a goat. So it came from an animal, therefore it is carnivore or carnivore-esque, depending on who you talk to. You have to adapt it for you and not be dogmatic about it, because then we become being just as bad as the vegans.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell a little bit of the difference? Because I've heard a lot of people say, well, that just sounds like another version of a keto diet. Can you explain the big differences between the carnivore and the keto?
Sure. And I had started out doing keto and it never resonated. With ketos, you're looking to be in ketosis. We don't have any of that with carnivore. I mean, if that's your goal, that's fine and dandy, but I'm not looking at my macros. I'm not counting my how much fat am I getting per my protein. I'm not eating the veggies, because you can have that low carb, like here's your veggies on keto. I'm not doing any of that stuff. With carnivore, it's meat. Add a bit more fat, take away some fat. See how you feel. Go by how you feel. After the adaptation phase, if you find that you're going to the washroom constantly and lipase isn't helping you, maybe take down your fat a little bit. You're still hungry, maybe increase your fat a bit. The most common problem I see with carnivore is that people don't eat enough. They're afraid to eat too much. Well, how many calories should I be getting? How much fat? Just eat until you're full and leave it at that. That's where I come from with that. So with keto, there's, and you've got all these keto treats and keto desserts that, listen, junk food is junk food, no matter what label you put on it. I'm not a fan of the keto desserts. I feel as though a lot of people that come to carnivore have that keto dessert mentality where I can have this because it has the right amount of X, Y, and Z. And they're not dealing with that addiction to the sugar. And carnivore smacks you in the face where it says, addiction to sugar, poof, gone. And once you adapt, you no longer crave it. You change your taste buds. You taste food how it's meant to taste. It's incredible how food tastes to me now compared to a year ago. So keto is more of, it's in its own realm. A lot of people say, keto and carnivore are the same. They're not. It's animal products, period. Done. No veggies, there's no keto junk. Or sorry, carnivore junk. You don't have like carnivore desserts. I mean, and else liver pate. It's considered, it's like a mousse, sure.
So the people who are hearing about carnivore, and one of the biggest things you hear about it is, okay, wait a second. There's no vegetables. Where are you getting your nutrients and your value? You're not getting fiber. You're not getting all the things that are in these healthy greens. So can you answer the question of how somebody who's just eating this carnivore-based diet is going to not have nutritional deficiencies because they're not getting their fruits and vegetables in their diet?
So first off, there's less glucose. When you have less glucose, you have more uptake of a lot of other things like vitamin C. Everybody's saying, hey, Holly, what about scurvy? Where are you going to get your vitamin C? There's actually vitamin C in, eating nose to tail. You're getting it in organ meats. There's some vitamin C in muscle meats. I don't know where along the way we forgot that it was in there, but it is in there. You need less of a lot of things on a carnivore diet. Our RDA, the recommended daily amount of X, Y, and Z, is based on a diet that contains fiber and carbs and this and that. So if you don't have these things binding and getting in the way with their anti-nutrients that are binding to the zinc, or they're binding to your B vitamins or your magnesium or whatever the case may be, there's more bioavailable nutrients. So if you have nothing getting in the way, you don't need as much. You can have less and be meeting your body's requirements. I eat much less when you look at the scale of things as far as my B vitamins go. I get lots of vitamin A, of course, because I'm eating liver. But in my vitamin C, I mean, I'm getting low levels of that, yet when you test me, it's through the roof. I don't have the fiber in the way. Fiber gets in there, and it binds to things, and it stops absorption of things, and it clogs things up, and it stretches out your intestines. That doesn't sound like a good time to me. Yeah, we have this myth that's put out by a cereal company that says each brand, get your fiber, and then that sort of traveled over to eat your vegetables because you need the fiber. Fiber doesn't actually make you poop, it constipates you. But once you've gotten so used to stretching it and binding it and changing the format, we sort of think that we do need that to be regular, but all it's doing is just packing it more, which is then kind of pushing things out. But that's forceful and aggressive, and our body doesn't like that. I've never been more regular with solid stool and happy poop as I am on a carnivore diet. I don't have loose stool anymore, minus the adaptation phase. Thank God for lipase. I'm not constipated. I go every day. I'm not cranky because I'm not full of poop, which makes you cranky. My estrogen levels are back to normal because I am getting rid of what needs to be gotten rid of. Even if I were to go to the bathroom less, the theory is that it's because you're consuming less waste, you're utilizing all of it. But that being said, I am, and most of my patients are, much more regular eating just meat. We don't need the fiber. The nutrients are there, nose to tail. I'm a huge fan of nose to tail. I feel like just muscle meat's not enough. It's got to be nose to tail. You know, your heart, the brain is full of amazing nutrients, the heart, the liver. Some people go for the thyroid, the adrenal gland, whatever the case may be that you want to add in. You don't have to be quite that hardcore, and you can supplement. There are different ancestral supplement companies that do have organ blends or bone blend for the boron, because boron's fantastic. We need to get back to basics. You're not going to be missing any nutrients if you're nose to tail. If you're eating vegetables, you're probably going to be missing nutrients though.
Yeah, I think that it goes with any sort of diet that you go on. I think that whether you're doing a vegan diet or a carnivore diet, you have to be doing that diet appropriately. So, you know, where you say the nose to tail, I think that, you know, just eating a steak every single day you may still end up with issues. And that, you know, having that diversity, I think regardless of what diet you do, I think that that's going to be really key, is that you want to be the best at that diet. If you're going to be carnivore, you want to be best at carnivore. If you're going to be doing the vegan diet, you need to be a really good vegan. But when you look at the flip side of it, I think that, yeah, the nose to tail, I think is really, really important.
Something I see with my Hashimoto patients and thyroid patients is low vitamin D. I look at the insoluble fiber, which binds to magnesium. Well, if you don't have enough magnesium in your tissues, and when we test for vitamin D, we look at magnesium, we're looking at this serum value, which is not where, that's 10% of the value, 90% of it is in your tissues. You need to have an RBC magnesium. And then you do that, you look at it and you go, oh, that's really low. You need to have that magnesium for your vitamin D status. So again, insoluble fiber, that's a problem. Remove that, and I notice the magnesium goes through the roof, and everything else with it to balance, and then the vitamin D improves. And it wasn't about vitamin D supplementation. It was about stopping what was binding and removing what we needed.
Right. So a couple of the things that maybe we should talk to people about who are considering something like a carnivore diet. And I think one of the biggest things that we have to make sure as in this community is we have a tendency to, everybody puts their flag in the ground and says, this is my dogma, this is my religion, and this is the only thing that works. All the diets have the potential to work a little bit differently for everybody else. So somebody else may not do fantastic on carnivore, and somebody may do fantastic. You see the people who have been doing autoimmune protocols and never get healthy, never get well, they switch to a carnivore diet and they get well. So there's pluses and minuses to each one of these diets, and everybody's going to find their unique kind of home. But what are the challenges that somebody should be aware of if they consider doing a carnivore diet? You talked about that intro phase, right? I'm familiar with that as well, but maybe you can explain the intro phase of a carnivore diet as you get started. What types of signs and symptoms might you experience that you should be aware of so you don't think, oh man, this is making me worse?
So I noticed that some people coming over from even a keto diet or more plant-based, they end up, oh, what is that? My jaw is sore. Why? Or I have some aches and pains, or maybe they get a urinary tract infection. I have patients that come to me that have vulvodynia. What's going on? This is oxalates. So you experience this oxalate dumping. So if you start to get any of the symptoms of oxalate dumping, I say, hold up, time out. Let's calculate your oxalate score. What have you been eating? Give me your day-to-day. Let's food journal some stuff and figure it out. And then slowly bring you down to that like 50 milligrams per day marking. I mean, that's 6 spinach leaves. Like it's not hard to get to that max point. So we calculate that. Oh, I had lots of cacao and my almonds. The people that come to me and I say, first thing I say, are you doing smoothies? Oh, yes, I am. I got my almond milk because I'm dairy free because I've got Hashimoto's, and I've got almond butter in there, and I've got my spinach, and I threw in some blueberries, and it's fantastic. Oh, I even put some raw cacao in. I'm so healthy. And I go, perfect. So you just drank a bucket of oxalates, and now you want to go carnivore. It's going to hurt. So let's wean you off the oxalates, get those under control, and then get into carnivore. That's before you even jump into carnivore. You really have to assess that, and not enough people are doing that. They just want to jump right into it. And you can go predominantly carnivore and have the oxalates in there to help kind of mitigate some of those symptoms until you get to that level, that 50 milligrams per day, and then go full on carnivore. And then that first phase, you have that adaptation where maybe it's more fat than you're used to. You get loose stools. So you want to make sure, protein, we're not doing bitters like we're supposed to. We're not, how's your hydrochloric acid in your stomach? How's your bile flow? That's huge. You need that for your conversion, right? T4, T3, fat, bile, this all plays into thyroid. So you have to look at that big picture of take some magnesium, get enough salt, drink more water. Anything that's meat-based is that phase 1 for 30 days. So I'm a little bit more lenient. Have the eggs if you're okay with them. If you need a little dairy, you know what, even if you want to have some coffee just to make sure that you're not getting headachy, that's fine as well. But you could be groggy and lethargic for the first 3 weeks. That 2 to 3 mark week-wise is usually where then patients go, okay, now I'm feeling better. So if you're not going to do a full 30, even better 45 days, you may not get the full experience of what's going on. So you got to troubleshoot and handhold with patients for that first 30 to 45 days. So you make sure they're getting the supplements that they need to mitigate the symptoms. As I said, the digestive enzymes, that hydrochloric acid, betaine with pepsin, make sure that you can digest the protein, make sure if someone doesn't have a gallbladder, maybe they need some ox bile, because they've got their own issues with bile housing. Really look at the lipase enzyme. What else? The magnesium, drinking enough water, and the salt. Those are the things that are really important. And then you can kind of go into the phase 2, which is a little bit more strict if they want to for autoimmune conditions. Some people like to sit in that phase 1 comfortably and adapt it for them. Some people go straight to phase 3, which is the steak, the salt, the water. But when I say that, I'm also seeing people not being forceful enough with the water that they drink. I have it here. I have bottles. There's no plastic. It's pH balanced. I know what's in it. I know what's not in it. And those thyroid receptors, what's going to compete with the absorption and the utilization of our thyroid is going to be the fluoride. All these halides. The chlorine that's in your pool, the fluoride, all of these things they're going to bind and they're going to block and prevent our body from doing what it's supposed to do naturally. So if you're drinking tons more water with your salt because you're carnivore and you need more water because you need the electrolytes and you need more hydration, so you're putting all that extra fluoride into your system, this is going to kind of negate a lot of the positive that you would have got from that. So where, the water you're drinking is huge. The quality of the meat is important as well, but the quality of the water needs to be your number one focus with that.
Yeah. So for the listeners, can we go back to the oxalates and maybe explain what oxalates are and why they can cause issues in the body?
So oxalates are like shards. They come from plants. They're like shards of glass is the easiest way to get people to understand it. I've gone into the hardcore equations of it, and I watch people go cross-eyed and their jaws go, what? So the simplest way to say it is think of shards of glass. Now, would you want to ingest shards of glass? No. Well, then why are you consuming oxalates? So it's the same thing inside your body, and it gets into your tissues, your organs, your thyroid. So people with Hashimoto's, there's that oxalate connection. We're seeing the inflammation caused from the oxalates that have been found there. So that in and of itself is an issue. And of course, in the gut, contributing to intestinal permeability, that leaky gut all the way through your intestines, it's shredding up your body. I mean, it's shards of glass. So they're compounds found in plants. It's part of that defense mechanism that plants have. We've got the phytic acid, we've got the lectins, we've got the, you name it, that's in plants and beans and legumes and all of the things that are not carnivore. So defense mechanism that the plant has, they bind to the calcium in our body or into the iron. So that's another problem if it's binding to minerals and things that we need to, make us healthy. Another little trick I like to give is because it will bind to calcium. If you're going to have a meal, you're out and you're going to have that salad or something that's higher oxalate, pop some calcium, it'll bind it, you'll poop it out. It's like a protective layer.
Awesome. So when we're looking at the oxalates, is there a certain amount that people, if they ingest, that they're going to reach that level, or is it just some people have problems with oxalates, or is at any level can that be a problem for people?
To be low oxalate, you typically want to stay under the 50 milligram a day mark. That varies for people. So I'll do an organic acids test where the oxalates are in there, and I'll take a look at, what are your levels at? And if your levels are pretty good and I see what you're eating, okay, well, maybe you're one of those people that genetically speaking, you do better. You don't house as many in your tissues. Okay, maybe that level for you looks like a 70 or a 60. So you play around with it to see where a patient is at.
Okay.
Bioindividuality, we're all different genetically. I think that we have to play with numbers and base it on a patient-to-patient basis rather than just saying 50 is your cap point and that's it, that's all. I'm Irish. My DNA says I do great with potatoes, but potatoes are high in oxalates. So, you know what I mean? Do I do okay with them or do I not do okay with them? What is that answer? And at what point do I just have so much in my bucket that now I'm overflowing and I'm symptomatic? So I have to kind of say, I know that if I have potatoes once a month, I'm okay. If I have potatoes once a week, I'm not okay. And just know foods that are high oxalate, medium, low, super low, and play around with those. So if you don't want to be strict carnivore, you can still have things, certain lettuce or a super ripe avocado is going to be lower in oxalates than a not as ripe one, or depending on, is it a Hass avocado? What kind? What type? Blueberries. Regular blueberries, maybe not such a big deal. They're, kind of moderate in oxalates. But you go get wild blueberries, which are way more nutrient dense. They're also maxed out for oxalates. So we think, well, blueberries are healthier. But are they? So you really got to know the numbers and the levels, which is why working with somebody who understands oxalates is really good, because we can customize more to what your foods you like and say, okay, you like these, but these are high oxalate. You also like these and they're lower oxalate. Eat more of those because you can get more. You can play with that. And then you have more variety. And once in a while, you can delve into the high oxalate list if you tolerate it.
Yeah, I kind of jump into the oxalate conversation because you hear a lot about oxalates and the issues they can create with lots of aches and pains and brain fog and all kinds of symptoms. And I think it's important for the listener to know where a lot of plant-based foods have oxalates, but typically they're bound. They're bound to, they don't become free necessarily in an optimal state. But the big challenge does occur if you put a bunch of fats into the system, and this is one of the reasons where sometimes ketogenic diets can get people into challenge, if you put a bunch of fats into a system and you have compromised bile physiology because you have hypothyroidism, because you have chronic gut infections, because of a number of reasons, now you've got this excessive fat floating around in the system. And what has to happen is that fat needs to be addressed. And so what happens is the calcium that's bound to oxalates, or the magnesium that's bound to the oxalates, you wind up binding the magnesium and the calcium to the fat so that can be processed out of the body. And now the oxalates are available for absorption, and they can become problematic. The other issue that you have to understand is that, sometimes there's organisms in the GI tract that can produce oxalates and cause them to be absorbed. And there's bacteria that actually can help mitigate oxalates and break them down. And if you don't have a healthy gut biome, you're not producing those things to help manage it. So I think go ahead.
Just to touch on that, we have, which is funny, it's Oxalobacter formagene. Oxalobacter, oxalate, is one of the bacteria within our microbiome that in the gut that does help to get rid of oxalate. So absolutely. However, if we consume too many oxalates, it kills that bacteria off. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those, what's our sweet spot?
Yeah.
Does antibiotics play a role in that as well?
It's believed that antibiotics do play a role in that as well. So if you're wiping out the good flora, that's considered part of the good flora, and building it back up again. It's one of those bacteria that are not as well known or researched. There's a lot of literature out there for, the more popular ones. However, this particular one, it's like, oh God, it's like trying to go down a rabbit hole. You got to go deep to find info. And they say, yeah, antibiotics is going to destroy it. Too many oxalates are going to destroy it. But what helps to rebuild it?
Oh, that was an open-ended question?
The open-ended question, because
how are we going to rebuild? How are we rebuilding the gut flora? Is that what you're asking?
Just that particular one. So how do we build back up our Oxalobacter? I mean, can we supplement with it? Does it actually work? Can we find a supplement to put it back? I mean, we can find lactobacillus, we can find Bifidobacterium, we can find a ton of other ones, which also do help to degrade oxalates in the gut to a lesser degree. However, if you go and you buy your favorite probiotic supplement, I mean, we know prebiotics are going to feed certain bacteria, but if we're not eating fiber, we're only eating meat, is that then a problem? It doesn't even matter because we're not consuming the oxalates. So it's this vicious circle of, if I do this, will this happen? If I don't do that, but do I need that?
Yeah, I think the bacterial conversation is one that we don't have a huge or a great handle on, but I do have a future guest that's going to come on who is actually a scientist in this field, who's going to break this down a little bit more. And just so the listeners know, I mean, when we're talking about a type of bacteria, it's like saying the Smiths, right? Because in the Smiths family, there's millions of them. And we're talking about probiotics, especially. We could talk about a type of bacteria that you may see Acidophilus on a bottle, but there are lots of different Acidophilus or any one of these bacteria, and they don't all have the same impact on the GI tract. So we are going to have a guest on who can talk about that in depth, and we'll get into that oxalate conversation because he and I started to have that oxalate conversation a bit, but I'll save the rest of that for his presentation or his
That's
interview.
Exciting.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So if somebody's interested in a carnivore diet, like what are the key things and the key resources besides working maybe with a functional medicine practitioner who's really familiar with it? What do you think is what do you think are the key factors that they should be considering, or what are some of those key resources that they could consider?
I know that we have MeatRx, which is Dr. Sean Baker's kind of shtick. He's got his website where there's a ton of testimonials, and they're trying to put literature up there so that we have a resource, we have a place to go. However, Sean is not a huge proponent of nose to tail, so I prefer Dr. Paul Saladino for that. because he's very much a proponent of nose to tail. He's got an awesome book that he wrote. I have not read it myself, but I've heard tons of positive feedback. So I would say if you're looking for resources, those are the guys, they've been doing it longer and harder than most of the other people out there, and they've got the medical background. So they get it. They're delving into the research, and that's where I would go if I was looking for a resource. Those are the people that I would hit up. It's new. I mean, carnivore itself is not new. It's been around for, thousands of years. However, mainstream, it's new. So we've got everybody and the cat's uncle with a theory about how it should be done and what you need and what you don't need. We thought, I'm carnivore, I don't need any supplements, yet possibly boron is lacking and we need boron. So is that an issue? Is that not an issue? Wasn't an issue before, but we were also chewing on bones and getting everything out of the bones way back in the day. We don't do that now. I'm not walking down the street chewing on a like a bone, right? I mean, I'd get committed. But since we're not doing that, most people aren't grinding up eggshells. Most people are not doing it completely as per to spec, how it should be. So we do the best that we can, as with any diet. And then whatever's missing, we have to be honest enough with ourselves to say, hey, I'm still deficient in magnesium, or I'm low, I need more boron, or maybe I need a bit more of the herbal side of things because my body's just not cooperating. So I got to have bitters before my meal. Not being afraid to say, I need to add to this to complement my dietary theory. That's important.
What are the key? Go ahead, Erica.
What does from working with patients in the past, whether we're putting them on gluten-free or dairy-free, they're always like, well, I don't know what to eat, and I'm sure people do that with the carnivore diet as well. What does a typical day look like for you of what you eat?
It depends on where I am in my cycle. So most days I'm OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. So I'll have, and I get made fun of all of the time because I have a plate and it's filled with a steak. If I go to a restaurant, I ask for, what is the biggest steak you have? Like, I love to go to places that have the steak challenge. Because I'm like, I don't have to have anything with it. I can eat just the steak. They're like, yeah, if you can eat the steak, it's free. I'm like, bring it on. And I finish it and they're like, how is that humanly possible? I'm like, my 1 meal a day. Now I'll probably not eat again until like either 24 hours later or even a bit more. But I've had that, which is a little more like the snake diet. I've had this massive meal and it's a massive steak, a big old ribeye. Most days I have steak. If I'm later in my cycle where I get the cravings with the munchies, because that does happen, then I'll go to Parmesan crisps and I'll dip them in sort of a liver pate. So I'll make chicken hearts and chicken liver and beef liver and whatever it is, and I'll mix it all up, make it nice and creamy, a little egg in there, a little cream in there because I do dairy. I make it really creamy and I dip those in it and lots of salt. It's delicious. I feel like I'm having chips and dip. It's fantastic. So that's my cheat, but it's not a cheat because it's carnivore compliant. What else do? I do pork rinds. So, I do a mitza. The kids love it. It's like ground beef. You can afford ground beef. So you get ground beef and you put your egg in there and you moosh it all up. Some people like to add cream cheese. I'm not a big fan of cream cheese, but whatever. You put it all in and then you grind it. You blend up in your Vitamix your pork rinds. You throw them in because they act like that binding bready agent. Flatten it out, put some cheese on top of it, throw it in the oven. It melts all up. You cut your slices and you eat it. One slice of that is going to fill you up. You are done. It is so yummy. And these are the meals that we have within my house. It varies every single day so we don't get bored. But I do almost every day have a teaspoon of caviar, which sounds really bougie. But I want my salmon roe. I want to get the nutrients that are in there. I'm going to get my perfect ratio of my omegas, my 3s and my 6s and everything that's needed for my brain health, rather than supplement with a rancid oil, which might have incomplete ratios. So it's the details that are important. I make sure my salt, my high quality water, a lot of steak. I like my muscle meat, but I always give the organ meats to go with it.
Does the rest of your family do this as well?
So my kids are born and raised carnivore naturally. My oldest would get debilitating migraines. She had a vaccine injury with her eyes due to a chickenpox vaccine, which is rare-ish, but now we're finding not quite as rare. So she's got all of her other vaccines, but that one's the one that just like smacked it. So this is something that we live with, and oxalates seem to be a trigger. So when we remove those, she seems to do fine. If she wants a plate full of broccoli slathered in butter, go for it. If you ask for it and you want it, perfect, that's fine. But for the most part, she just wants a big old steak on her plate. And, you know, her grades in school are great. Her levels are great. Her nutrients are great. Her pediatrician commented about how much better she is now than she was 2 years ago. So I guess we're doing something right. My youngest has always been a meat kid. She loves meats. That's just her thing. My partner doesn't process beef as well. She's more of a plant-based person. However, in seeing my journey and seeing how I defied odds of logic and common sense, she decided to try it, and now performance in the gym is actually fantastic. She did an in-body because she wanted to disprove from an athlete standpoint that carnivore could be done. And so she did it, and she felt like arse for the first 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, boom. So her training in the gym was twice a week. She couldn't even do 3 days a week. She was just, it wasn't there. And so she compared her in-body pre-carnivore to post-carnivore. And I ran her labs as well to see what was going on. And her bone density increased. Her muscle mass, lean muscle mass increased. And her fat went down. Her body fat went down. So she had increased lean body mass and decrease of like crappy fat.
That's awesome.
But working out less.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are going to consider or wonder why is it or how is it possible that plant-based foods that we've been told for years are really healthy? There's vegetarians that are eating it. There's people that are eating these foods. How could they be unhealthy? And we talked about fiber for a bit, but the other thing that I think that most people need to consider, and I'll let you kind of jump in on this, is that a lot of the plant-based foods contain lectins or components that are meant to protect the plant from being eaten or consumed at a point in time when the plant isn't ready to be eaten or consumed. And so because of the way we live today, we eat lots of plants and things out of season, where these plant poisons can be, we may be consuming them at their highest point when the plant really is not hoping to be eaten. And so those foods can create some toxicity and be one of the main triggers that is creating the stress that's inducing chronic inflammation and autoimmunity. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, you know, we think of foods as a stressor and, you know, hormesis and all of that. So we do need a little bit of that stress, keeps the body going. However, you know, I soak my nuts and seeds and I boil down, and I do this with my grains and I get rid of, you know, the phytic acid, or we need polyphenols because they're healthy, you know, for our homocysteine levels and production of, you know, DAO enzymes. And I was on board with all of that until I realized that all of that was BS and it was killing me. I see so many and I don't take vegan patients anymore. I've stopped because it's just, unless you're committed to changing and adding in animal protein, I can't work with you. I can't do it. And the ones that come to me are because they're so sick and they're so depressed. And the amount of patients that come to me and they say, I'm vegan for ethical reasons and I want to slit my wrists. And that breaks my heart because there's a mental health aspect to this where I go, you know what? You may want to be something, but your body wants to be something else. How do we meet in the middle so that you feel like your body's okay, but you don't hurt your soul? What do we do? Because I care about the animals. I get it. So these things in my eyes, you know, the lectins they're poisons. There's these plant toxins that are poison and they're poisoning us. And what is our level that we can have before it makes us sick? Whose bucket is bigger? Each person's going to be different. Some vegans are healthy. I have friends who are vegans and I'm like, God, you look great. Your athletic performance is there. You're healthy. You're never depressed. You're always happy. Like, they look good. And I've seen their labs. They look good. Okay, let's do your genetics. What's going on a genetic side of things that makes you handle all of this? Where here I am over here. Carnivore makes me look like that. Who's
Yeah,
right?
and but that's the bio-individuality of each
Yeah.
of us, right? So we all have a little bit of uniqueness to us, and somebody might jump on and say, well, I'm going to do carnivore, not do well or feel well at all.
Yeah.
And that may not be the appropriate diet. And Dr. Erica and I talk about this all the time, is one of the biggest things we probably need to do in functional medicine is stop circling the wagons and shooting in, and instead embrace the uniqueness of eating whole food, healthy diets versus processed food. If most people gave up processed food, that would be the place to start. And the processed food industry is probably just, I mean, they've got to be beside themselves just laughing at those of us in the health community, because we're arguing with each other instead of really pushing the message out to say, hey, let's find the right diet for you within a healthy food paradigm, and let's get rid of all the lousy processed frankenfood. And if we did that, we'd have better conversations between the vegan and the carnivore and the keto, and it would just be a better conversation. And then we find where each of us falls on that scale and where we need to be for our optimal health. And where you're at today may not be where you need to be 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now. And I'm sure, Holly, you've seen the person who goes vegetarian or vegan, and they've felt the best they've ever felt for the first 2, 3, 4 years of their life. And then all of a sudden, they don't feel well, and they start to have challenges again, right? So
Yes.
I think for the listener, before, you want to, all of these things you can consider, hey, I want to try it. I'm not doing well. I want to try a carnivore diet. I'd say definitely it's a thing to consider. I've used it on a number of patients. I've experimented with myself. But I would also recommend you find somebody who's knowledgeable about it and help guide you if there's challenges and problems, and keep an eye on certain things as well. I want to finish up because I know we're going to run short on time, but what are the key nutrients that that somebody who's going to go on a carnivore diet, what are the things they need to be concerned about where they might have nutrient depletion, where they might have to consider some type of supplement so they don't get themselves into trouble?
I used to think, okay, maybe it would be iodine, but like there's 30% of the iodine in egg yolks is bioavailable. You get it in like beef and shrimp and stuff. So that isn't even so much an issue now. Get your electrolytes in. I think that's the most important part, is the electrolytes. The salt that you're consuming needs to be salt that has everything you need, the potassium and the magnesium and all of this. So
a good seed, like a good, not table salt, right? You want to be specific on that.
Himalayan salt, the pinker the rock, the better the mineral compounds are that are in it. You can have some Celtic gray sea salt or some Himalayan pink rock salt, because Himalayans are mountains. You can put those two together, use that. I like the snake juice recipe that I found online. It seems to kind of make sense, where it's got, a little of the baking soda, a little bit of the potassium, and a little bit of the magnesium, and you kind of mix it all up and you drink that. It's supposed to be when you're fasting. However, I find that it does help some patients when they have a little bit of it. I tell all my patients to start their day with, you have your water beside your bed, so it's room temperature, so it's closer to your body when you wake up in the morning, but it's got the salt in it. So make a Soleil, a salt brine, keep it in your fridge, throw a tablespoon or a teaspoon into that water, keep it beside the bed, wake up in the morning before your feet hit the ground, chug her back. You start your day dehydrated. Your adrenals feed off salt. So you just gone and done, boom, boom. That's amazing. So start your day like that. And then, look at your healthy salts, put them on your food. Don't be afraid of butter. Fats are good for you. Everybody's, physiology is going to be different. So play with your ratios and see how you're doing. If I find that my blood pressure seems to dip a little bit on this style of eating, which I was predisposed to anyway, I carry a bacon smoked Himalayan salt, a tiny little bottle of it in my purse. And I'm like, put it in my hand, like my hand. My mom did the same thing when I was a kid. It was like, what are you doing? You're so weird. And now I'm doing it going, I get it. Okay. So just listening to your body. And if you need to supplement with some stuff, I'm a huge fan of boron as a supplement on this diet. I like it. You can make your own out of borax. I know that sounds crazy because it's like laundry detergent, but you really can make your own, and there's protocols for it. You can Google it, find it online. It's huge.
I would say, I would just add to that, for somebody who's starting this process, and you alluded to it before, definitely you need to consider where your digestive state is when you start this process. So definitely there may be a need for digestive bitters, some acid support, because you're going to be putting in some foods that are really going to need some support. And if you're already hypothyroid, your thyroid physiology is going to compromise your ability to produce stomach acid, proper bile flow, and pancreatic enzymes. So you want to keep an eye on that. So you might need some type of bitters, some type of betaine HCl as a support. You may need some bile support for thyroid patients. I would definitely be a little cautious if you're going to add ox bile, because we know that it can increase the conversion of T4 to T3, and that sounds great. But I learned from the example, you give ox bile to somebody, and that can actually create an exacerbation of some hyperthyroid symptoms, thinning hair, things women especially don't want. So we got to watch out for that a little bit. But you do want to support bile physiology and make sure that your digestive enzyme output is appropriate. If you're struggling on it, like gassy, bloated, pressure, constipation, diarrhea, as you suggested, definitely work with somebody to get some of that support. And the other thing to consider is work with that functional medicine practitioner to understand why you need those things. What's causing the HCl problem? What's maybe causing your digestion issues, especially if you're female or a male who's got estrogen issues. Estrogen will shut down that whole gallbladder, pancreatic input via the sphincter of Oddi. So just be cautious as you go into the process. Always good to try something new, but also make sure that if you're struggling, doesn't mean that you need to throw the whole thing away, but you probably need to meet with somebody who's understanding how to do the diet appropriately and why your physiology may not be adapting to it as well.
Yeah. And I mean, we used to have bitters way back in the day. Other countries in Europe, we have bitters. So we should be having bitters with every meal anyway. Meat is food, herbs are medicine. It doesn't make sense to me that we're not incorporating that. And that's going to help all of that along. You know, different things within the bitters have different roles to play with the pancreas and with bile production and with the, hydrochloric acid of the stomach, all of that.
Yeah, I think we're just in a rush moving around. We're not setting ourselves up to begin with for good digestion. And things like bitters, I think, are only left to an old fashioned or whatever your grandma used to drink and throw the bitters in there. I don't think you talk about bitters pre-meal unless they're having a cocktail. So,
right.
But I agree with you. So we'll finish this up because your time is valuable. We appreciate you being on. But if somebody wanted to learn more about what you do, where can they find you? What's your website? We'll put this information in the show notes. But where can they get a hold of you, and how can they follow you?
So you can follow me on social media. Facebook is my Holly Warner Health page. I put out things, here and there. I try to be regular with it. If you want to really see lots of info, go to my Holly Warner Health on Instagram. That's the best place to follow because there's a little bit of me and some videos and, the IGTV. My website has my blog, so I always post things on my blog. So you can type in the search if you're looking for thyroid or estrogen or whatever you're looking for, oxalates, boron, whatever, and the info will be there. If you're not afraid of a trucker mouth and an F-bomb doesn't offend you, go to my YouTube channel because it's sassy. It's just Holly Warner Health or the Sassy Carnivore. YouTube is where most of my really cool videos are. So I would go there if you can handle some fun conversation.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being on, and maybe we'll have you on in the future and get another roundup on where carnivore is sometime in the future. But we definitely appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
I enjoyed it.
You bet. Have a great day. And for all of our listeners, share the podcast with your friends, your family. Keep helping us grow those numbers of listeners. I'm amazed every day at how many people are downloading our episode. So take care, everybody, and we'll sign out for now.
Yeah, see ya.